Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm your host, Mr.Night-Terror. Prepare to journey into the heart of darkness as I narrate creepypasta stories that I write myself. I hope you all enjoy. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy these kinds of stories. And as always, stay scared, my friends. Drake, over here. Raymond, the bartender, called out from behind the counter. A warm smile spread across my face as I approached the bar. I couldn't help but feel at ease within these familiar surroundings. It was a place where I could escape the burdens of my past, if only for a moment. Raymond, my friend, I greeted, extending a hand which the bartender eagerly shook. How are you this evening? Can't complain, sir, Raymond replied, already reaching for a bottle of my favorite scotch. The amber liquid flowed smoothly into a glass, served neat just as I preferred. As I sipped my drink, I took in the lively atmosphere around me. The low hum of conversation melded with the clink of glasses and laughter, creating a symphony of celebration. I watched as friends embraced and strangers became acquainted over shared drinks, the spirit of camaraderie palpable. Tonight was a special occasion after all. I had recently closed a significant deal, acquiring a beautiful old Victorian house that I planned to renovate and sell for a substantial profit. Congratulations on your latest acquisition, Mr. Livingston, a nearby patron chimed in, raising his glass in a toast. Thank you, I replied, nodding graciously as I raised my glass in return. The victory felt bittersweet, however, as the house's history weighed on my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this property than met the eye. It was a challenge I welcomed, though, one that would test my survival instincts and ability to adapt. Quite a crowd tonight, I mused, my thoughts interrupted by Raymond's voice. Indeed, everyone's here to celebrate your success, the bartender responded, gesturing towards the bustling room. You've made quite an impact on this community. My chest swelled with pride, but also a sense of responsibility. I had worked hard to build my empire, overcoming obstacles that would have broken lesser men. Yet, I knew that success often bred envy and suspicion. I had learned to trust few, always vigilant for those who sought to exploit my vulnerabilities. I took another sip of scotch, allowing the warmth to settle within me as my gaze swept across the bar. Tonight, I would revel in my accomplishments, surrounded by laughter and good company. But tomorrow, the real work would begin, transforming the old Victorian house into a modern masterpiece, a symbol of my unwavering determination and ambition. Here's to new beginnings, I proclaimed, raising my glass high above my head. The crowd around me cheered in response, their drinks meeting with a symphony of clinks and laughter that filled the room. As I took a sip from my glass, the excitement bubbled within me like champagne. The old Victorian house, a beautiful yet decaying behemoth, would soon be reborn under my careful guidance. As I scanned the crowd, my eyes landed on a man who seemed out of place among the well-dressed, jubilant patrons. His disheveled appearance was jarring, his unkempt hair framing a face that looked like it hadn't seen a razor in weeks. He donned an unconventional attire, a tattered denim jacket over a stained white t-shirt and worn-out jeans. From the corner of my eye, I watched him approach me with cautious steps, as if unsure whether to join the celebration or retreat into the shadows. Drake Livingston, he said, extending a hand toward me. I've heard quite a bit about you. Congratulations on your recent acquisition. Thank you, I replied, shaking his rough hand. For some reason I felt compelled to ask, and who might you be? I'm nobody important. You wouldn't know me, he responded, his voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and amusement. I couldn't help but overhear the talk about the Victorian house you just bought. Quite a fascinating property, isn't it? Indeed it is, I answered, sensing there was more to this man than met the eye. It's a challenging project, one that I'm eager to tackle. Transforming such a historic building into a modern masterpiece will be an incredible journey. Ah, so you're planning to renovate, the man mused, a wry smile playing on his lips. It'll be interesting to see what you do with the place. I've always been a fan of old architecture, you see. Is that so? I asked, my curiosity piqued. It wasn't every day that an enigmatic stranger showed such interest in my work. Indeed, the man replied, his eyes dancing with an intensity I couldn't quite decipher. Sometimes there's more to a house than just bricks and mortar. It's the history, the stories that have unfolded within its walls. Don't you agree? Yeah, I suppose, I conceded, swirling the amber liquid in my glass thoughtfully. But sometimes it's the potential of what they could become that's even more captivating. Ah, so you're the visionary type, the man noted, his eyes twinkling with interest. Tell me, what do you envision for that old Victorian house? Something modern, yet still holding on to its roots, I explained, feeling a renewed surge of excitement as I spoke about my plans. I want the house to become part of the community again, instead of being hidden away under layers of dust and decay. An interesting concept, he mused, taking a sip of his own drink. It's certainly a challenge, but one that could yield remarkable results if done properly. Exactly, I agreed, appreciating his understanding. It's not just about making money or flipping properties. It's about giving these forgotten gems new life and purpose. Very noble, he said with a nod. I must say, Mr. Livingston, your passion is quite infectious, and I'm sure you'll need all the help you can get with such an ambitious project. Are you offering your expertise? I asked, raising an eyebrow in surprise. Perhaps, he replied enigmatically. But first, I'd like to know more about you, Drake Livingston. After all, we wouldn't want any skeletons in the closet now, would we? As the night wore on, our conversation deepened, delving into the intricacies of our lives and experiences. I found myself sharing more with this stranger than I had with anyone in years. It was as if he had unlocked something within me, a connection forged through shared understanding and ambition. Yet, despite the camaraderie, I couldn't shake the nagging sensation that there was more to him than met the eye. What secrets lay hidden beneath his disheveled exterior? And what role would he play in the future of the Victorian house? My grip tightened on the cool tumbler, condensation dampening my palm as I let the excitement of the project take hold. The house has so much potential, sir, I said with fervor. Call me Chester, he said. Okay, Chester. I envision a sleek fusion of old-world Victorian charm and modern elegance. We'll restore the original features wherever possible, but also incorporate state-of-the-art technology and amenities. Interesting, Chester mused, rubbing his chin thoughtfully and leaning in closer. The dim, flickering lights above us cast an eerie glow on his face. And what about the rumored hauntings? Have you considered the possibility that the house might not be as welcoming to change as you are? Ah, the ghost stories, I chuckled, dismissing the idea with a wave of my hand. A bit of local folklore, nothing more. Besides, if there's one thing I've learned in this business, it's that fear is just another obstacle to overcome. Indeed, he replied, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied me. But sometimes embracing the darkness can yield unexpected rewards. His words were unsettling, but I brushed it off as a side effect of too many drinks. Well, regardless of any alleged supernatural activity, I'm committed to seeing this project through to the end. The finished product will be something truly extraordinary, a testament to progress and innovation. Admirable, Mr. Livingston, Chester said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I do appreciate a man who isn't afraid to push boundaries. As we continued our conversation, I couldn't help but notice how Chester's curiosity seemed to extend beyond mere professional interest. There was a hunger in his gaze, a predatory gleam that suggested ulterior motives. Tell me, Chester, I ventured cautiously, what exactly draws you to this house? Is it the architecture or something more personal? Ah, well, he hedged, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. One could say I have a bit of a history with the place. Let's just say it holds a certain fascination for me. I studied him closely, trying to decipher the hidden meaning behind his words. But as much as I probed, Chester remained an enigma, a puzzle whose solution seemed perpetually out of reach. Perhaps one day you'll indulge me with the full story, I said lightly, clinking glasses with him in a toast to our newfound alliance. Perhaps, he agreed, the corner of his mouth quirking up in a half-smile that was equal parts charming and unnerving. But for now, let's focus on the journey ahead, shall we? After all, every great adventure begins with a single step. As I drained the last of my whiskey, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease settling over me like a gathering storm. Despite my outward confidence, I knew that delving into the depths of the Victorian house would be akin to opening Pandora's box. And as I looked into Chester's inscrutable eyes, I wondered if I had unwittingly invited the serpent into my garden. As Chester and I delved into conversation, it felt as though the world outside the bar began to blur and fade away. The two of us found ourselves in a bubble of camaraderie, sharing stories and anecdotes about our lives over drinks. It was a strange connection, one that felt both exhilarating and disconcerting in equal measure. The scotch had taken its effect, as we continued to meddle in conversation, both of us talking about our drunken stories of the past. "The first time I got drunk, I broke my arm trying to jump off a roof," Chester said, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Sounds like something a reckless teenager would do," I replied, chuckling. "Exactly. I was 15 at the time. Thought I could fly if I just put my mind to it." As we laughed together, I noticed other patrons gravitating toward us, drawn in by our lively banter. They joined the conversation, adding their own tales of youthful folly and daring exploits. The atmosphere grew more boisterous with each passing moment, punctuated by hearty laughter and clinking glasses. "Congratulations on your latest acquisition, Mr. Livingston," one patron exclaimed, slapping me on the back. "Can't wait to see what wonders you'll work with that old Victorian place." "Thank you," I replied, raising my glass in appreciation. The room erupted in applause, and I couldn't help but beam with pride. For a brief moment, all my fears and doubts seemed to vanish, replaced by a surge of excitement for the future. As the celebration continued, I found myself stealing glances at Chester, attempting to decipher the enigmatic man who had so suddenly entered my life. He exuded an aura of charm and confidence, yet there was something else lurking beneath the surface. Still, the night wore on, and I allowed myself to be swept up in the tide of revelry. As I downed another shot, I felt a strange warmth spread through my veins, followed by a sudden, inexplicable sense of kinship with the man sitting beside me. "Here's to new friends," Chester declared, raising his glass in a toast, "and to the incredible journey that lies ahead." "Cheers," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. And as the night wore on, I couldn't help but feel that I was standing at the precipice of something monumental, a turning point that would irrevocably alter the course of my life. But for now, I chose to revel in the moment, basking in the camaraderie and excitement that permeated the air. The future could wait. Tonight, we were kings among men, united by our shared ambition and the boundless possibilities that lay before us. The laughter echoed through the air, mingling with the clinking of glasses and the hum of conversation. As I sat beside Chester, it felt as though we were old friends catching up after years apart. He regaled me with tales of his engineering feats, each one more intriguing than the last. And yet there was an undercurrent of mystery that drew me to him, like a moth to a flame. "Tell me, Chester," I said, leaning in closer, "what brings a man like you to a place like this? Surely there's more to your story than just engineering." A sly smile played on his lips, and he took a slow sip from his glass before responding. "Well, Drake, I'm a firm believer in fate. Sometimes people are meant to cross paths, and tonight, it seems, is our night." Throughout the evening, other patrons approached to offer their congratulations and share in our celebration. The atmosphere was electric, everyone feeding off the energy in the room. But my focus remained on Chester, intrigued by the enigma sitting beside me. "All right, then. Let's talk about fate," I challenged playfully, swirling the ice in my drink. "Why do you think we were destined to meet?" "Perhaps we both have something to learn from one another," he mused, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Or perhaps we're simply two sides of the same coin, bound together by our ambition and drive." As the night wore on, I found myself more and more captivated by Chester's words, his presence commanding my full attention. Unbeknownst to me, the darkness that lay beneath the surface of his disheveled exterior remained hidden, waiting patiently for the perfect moment to reveal itself. "Drake, I must say, I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do with that old Victorian house," Chester said, raising an eyebrow. "I have a feeling you're going to turn it into something extraordinary." "Thank you, Chester," I replied as I felt appreciated. "I can't wait to get started on the project. It's going to be a game changer for this town." As the evening drew to a close and the last of the patrons filtered out of the bar, Chester and I stood up to part ways. The air was charged with excitement, both of us brimming with anticipation for what lay ahead. "Until we meet again, Drake," Chester said, extending his hand. "I have no doubt that our paths will cross once more." "Likewise, Chester," I smiled, shaking his hand firmly. "Here's to fate, and the journey it has in store for us." With that, we separated into the night, each of us embarking on our own path, unaware of just how intertwined our fates would soon become. And as I walked away from the bar, the weight of the impending renovation project settled upon my shoulders, fueled by the thrill of new beginnings and the promise of untold possibilities. The next morning, I awoke. As consciousness returned, a deep ache pulsed through my skull. I tried to focus my thoughts, but they were as blurred as the room around me. I blinked, attempting to clear my vision, but it only made the pain worse. "Where am I?" I muttered, pushing myself into a sitting position on the dusty floor. My hands grazed against the cold wooden planks, and I shuddered at the sensation. The room was dimly lit, casting eerie shadows over the ornate wallpaper. I could make out the faded outlines of Victorian-era furniture that seemed to have been left untouched for decades. A musty smell hung heavily in the air, like the scent of decaying memories. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I couldn't help but feel as if I was intruding upon some long-forgotten secret. "Hello?" I called out, hoping for any response that might offer an explanation for this disorienting predicament. Nothing but silence answered me, punctuated by the creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. "Think, Drake, think," I urged myself, rubbing my temples. "How did you end up here?" I studied the room, searching for clues among the dust-covered relics. An old grandfather clock loomed in one corner, its hands frozen in time. A tattered armchair sat beside a fireplace, where the ashes of a fire long extinguished lay cold and gray. As I moved cautiously through the space, the floor groaned beneath me, a wretched symphony of age and decay. Did someone bring me here? I wondered aloud, the thought sending chills down my spine. Why would anyone want to trap me in a place like this? Was this some sick game or twisted form of revenge? The uncertainty gnawed at me, feeding my growing sense of dread. "Okay, calm down," I said to myself, taking a deep breath. "You're Drake Livingston. You've been in tough situations before. You'll figure this out." I forced myself to focus on the present, cataloging my surroundings with the same keen attention to detail that had served me well in my real estate ventures. As I did so, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that someone, or something, was watching me from the shadows. "Whoever you are," I whispered, my voice shaking with equal parts rage and fear. "You picked the wrong man to play this game with." "Think, Drake, think," I muttered under my breath, trying to recall the last thing I remembered before waking up in this hellish place. The memories were foggy, disjointed, a hazy blur of images and sounds. Had I been drugged? Kidnapped? My heart pounded in my chest as the implications sunk in. "Damn it!" I shouted, slamming my fist against a nearby wall. Pain shot through my knuckles, but it was nothing compared to the searing panic that gripped me. Okay, I tried to reassure myself, taking a deep, shuddering breath. "First things first, find your phone. Call for help." It seemed like a reasonable plan. If only I knew where my phone was. I patted down my pockets, feeling the weight of their emptiness. Panic surged through me, the realization dawning that not only was my phone missing, but so were my wallet, keys, and everything else I'd had on me. I was alone in a nightmare with no lifeline to the outside world. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice echoing through the dimly lit room. No response came, save for the creaking floorboards and the distant drip of water from some unseen source. I felt small and vulnerable, a sensation I hadn't experienced since I was a child. "Get a grip, Drake," I scolded myself, pacing back and forth. "You're not going to get anywhere by panicking." I took another deep breath and tried to calm my racing thoughts. I needed a clear head to make sense of my situation and find a way out. "All right, let's retrace my steps," I thought, closing my eyes and focusing on the fragments of memory that still lingered. I was at the office then, a bar, a meeting with someone maybe. It was all so frustratingly vague. Who could have brought me here? I wondered aloud, racking my brain for any possible enemies or rivals who might want to see me suffer. But the list was long. Success had made me many enemies over the years. Focus on what you can do now, I told myself, feeling a spark of determination ignite within me. I couldn't change the past, but I could control how I reacted to my current predicament, and I wasn't going to let whoever put me here win. All right, Drake, time to do what you do best. Adapt and survive. My resolve hardened as I braced myself for the unknown horrors that awaited me in the depths of the house. I might not have my phone, wallet, or keys, but I still had my wits about me, and that would have to be enough. Creeping through the dimly lit hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The creaking floorboards beneath my feet echoed like gunshots in the silence, making me wince with every step. My heart pounded in sync with the rhythm of my footsteps as I tried to focus on finding a way out. As I ventured further into the unknown, I stumbled upon a door, slightly ajar. The faint light seeping from behind it beckoned me. Hesitating for a moment, I pushed the door open with a trembling hand, revealing a room that seemed out of place in this decaying Victorian house. "Welcome," read the crimson letters scrawled across a white banner on one wall. Below it was a sign that sent chills down my spine. "Beware, deadly traps and puzzles await." Is this some kind of sick joke? I muttered under my breath, scrutinizing the room. It was filled with ominous devices and contraptions, their purpose unclear but undoubtedly sinister. Think, Drake, think. You've seen movies like this before. It's just a prank or a twisted form of entertainment, I tried convincing myself, my eyes darting from one unsettling gadget to another. But deep down, I knew better. This was no game. My life was on the line. Okay, let's say this is real. What do I do now? I whispered, fear clawing at the back of my mind. Panic threatened to take hold, but I couldn't afford to lose control. Not now. I had to stay focused and find a way out. First things first, I need to understand these traps and puzzles. Knowledge is power, after all, I reasoned, forcing myself to take a closer look at one of the devices. It seemed to be a complex mechanism, with gears, levers, and wires that defied my understanding. Whoever designed this has a twisted mind, I muttered, feeling a mix of admiration and revulsion for the person responsible. But if they created it, then there must be a way to beat it. All right, Drake, you can do this. Just take it one trap at a time, I told myself, looking for any clues or patterns. I examined the traps meticulously, trying to decipher their twisted mechanisms. Each one was a malevolent creation, designed to challenge not just my intellect, but also my survival instincts. One of the traps appeared to be a pressure plate set within a wooden frame. Upon closer inspection, I realized it was rigged to trigger a series of hidden blades if weight was applied incorrectly. This cruel device was clearly meant to kill, unless I could disarm it. Another trap was an intricate combination lock, its dials adorned with cryptic symbols. It seemed to guard a passage forward, demanding a precise sequence of movements to proceed. The designer had a sadistic sense of humor, as even the slightest misstep would likely trigger a deadly consequence. Then, there was a deceptively simple-looking floor panel. Beneath its surface, I suspected there lay a mechanism rigged to collapse if too much weight was placed upon it. It was a cruel ruse, designed to lull victims into a false sense of security. Despite my best efforts, one of the traps proved to be too cunning for me. It appeared to be a seemingly innocuous lever, positioned against the wall. As I hesitated, trying to discern its purpose, the trap sprang into action. Razor-sharp blades shot out from concealed compartments, slicing through the air with a sickening swish. I reacted instinctively, attempting to pull my hand away, but it was too late. The blade struck with a cruel precision, severing two of my fingers. The pain was searing, white-hot, as shock coursed through me. Blood welled from the wounds, staining the wooden floor beneath me. I bit back a scream, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. I stumbled away from the trap, clutching my injured hand, the world around me spinning. Through gritted teeth, I forced myself to focus. I needed to find a way out, to escape this nightmarish labyrinth. The pain was excruciating, but it fueled my determination. With trembling steps, I pressed on, my resolve unwavering despite the agony that coursed through me. There was no turning back now. The pain in my hand throbbed relentlessly, each beat of my heart sending fresh waves of agony through my body. I pressed on, determined to find a way out of this trap. The room seemed to close in around me, the air heavy with the weight of terror. As I moved cautiously through the room, my breaths came in ragged gasps. Every step was a battle against the searing pain, but I couldn't afford to falter. I needed to escape, to find answers, and to confront the person responsible for this twisted game. Suddenly, a crackling voice echoed through the room, emanating from an intercom hidden in the shadows. It was a voice I recognized all too well, the voice of Chester, the enigmatic stranger from the bar. "Drake, my dear friend, it seems you found yourself in a bit of a predicament, haven't you?" His voice taunted, dripping with a perverse satisfaction. "Chester Holmes, what is this madness? Why are you doing this?" I shouted, my voice a mix of desperation and fury. "Ah, Drake, always the inquisitive one," he chuckled. "You see, you've stumbled into a little game I've set up. A test, if you will, of your mettle and resourcefulness." "A game? This is crazy. Let me go right now," I roared, my words reverberating off the cold, unforgiving walls. "Oh, I'm afraid it's not that simple, my friend," Chester replied, his tone dripping with malice. "You see, you've acquired something that rightfully belongs to me. My house. You know, this house we're in and the land it stands on. It holds a sentimental value, shall we say. So this is revenge? You drug and kidnapped me because I bought your property?" I seethed, my mind racing to make sense of the twisted logic behind his actions. "Revenge is such a crude term, Drake. Think of it as a test of character, an opportunity for you to prove your worthiness," Chester explained, his words laced with a chilling sincerity. "If you can navigate these challenges and emerge unscathed, then perhaps you are deserving of the spoils." "You're deranged!" I spat, my anger boiling over. "This is nuts, and you'll pay for it." "Oh, I have no doubt that you'll try and find a way to make me pay, Drake," he purred, his voice dripping with sinister amusement. "But for now, focus on the task at hand. The clock is ticking, after all." With that, the intercom fell silent, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the oppressive weight of the room. I couldn't afford to dwell on Chester's twisted motives. I needed to press on, to find a way out of this place. As I moved forward, my mind raced with possibilities. Every step was a calculated risk, every choice a potential trap. I scrutinized each device, searching for any clue or weakness that might offer an advantage. The pain in my hand was a constant reminder of the stakes, urging me to push forward despite the odds. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity as I navigated the treacherous contraptions. Each challenge seemed more insurmountable than the last, testing not just my intellect, but also my resolve. And through it all, Chester's voice echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of the man who held the strings to this sadistic game. I couldn't afford to let anger or despair consume me. I needed to stay focused, to find a way out and confront Chester on my terms. As the room seemed to blur around me, I pressed on, determined to emerge victorious from this twisted trial. The answers I sought were within reach, and I refused to let Chester's twisted game be the end of me. The fire of determination burned bright within me, lighting the way through the darkness. The puzzle before me held a grim warning. Through fire, steel is forged. Are you willing to be molded? It was a daunting challenge, a test of endurance and resolve. The words seemed to echo in the back of my mind as I steeled myself to face what lay ahead. As I approached, the room seemed to grow hotter, the air itself pulsating with searing intensity. The door ahead loomed like the gaping maw of a furnace, flames dancing hungrily within. My heart pounded in my chest, but I couldn't afford to hesitate. This was the crucible through which I must pass. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, the first wave of scorching heat hitting me like a physical blow. It was as if the very air was on fire, every breath an exercise in agony. Sweat poured down my face, mingling with the stinging pain of the burns on my hand. But I pressed on, determination overriding the screams of protest from my body. The flames roared around me, tongues of fire licking at my clothes, threatening to consume me whole. Each step forward was a calculated gamble, a dance with death. The pain was unrelenting, a constant reminder of the inferno I had willingly entered. As I neared the center of the chamber, I could feel the heat intensify, the searing intensity like a vice around my chest. My vision swam, edges blurred by the oppressive waves of heat. It was a battle of wills, man against fire, determination against destruction. With a final surge of strength, I reached the pedestal, my trembling hand reaching out for the key. It gleamed in the harsh light, a small but significant victory in the face of unimaginable pain. I clenched it tightly, my fingers protesting against the strain. Turning to leave, I forced myself to retrace my steps, each one a Herculean effort. The flames seemed to howl in protest, as if angered by my audacity in defying them. The pain was excruciating, every inch of my body screaming in protest. Finally, I emerged from the chamber, my body covered in burns, clothes charred and tattered. The pain was nearly unbearable, but I couldn't afford to succumb to it. I needed to press on, to confront Chester and put an end to this sadistic game. With the key clutched tightly in my hand, I continued my harrowing journey through the nightmarish labyrinth, every step a testament to my determination to survive. The memory of the flames and the searing pain in my hand would stay with me, a grim reminder of the price I had paid for my tenacity. The pain was relentless, a fiery tide that threatened to consume me. Every movement sent waves of agony radiating from my burned hand, but I couldn't afford to give in to weakness. I had the key, a symbol of my triumph over the cruel puzzle, and it was a prize worth the suffering. As I moved forward, the path ahead seemed even more treacherous, the traps more insidious. I navigated each one with a newfound sense of caution, acutely aware of the dangers that lurked around every corner. Every step was a calculated risk, every decision a potential life or death choice. The memory of Chester's voice echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of the man who held the strings to this sadistic game. I couldn't let anger or despair consume me. I needed to stay focused, to find a way out and confront Chester on my terms. Hours seemed to blur together, a nightmarish montage of pain and determination. The labyrinth seemed endless, each turn leading to more challenges, more trials. But I pressed on, driven by a fierce resolve to see this through to the end. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I stood before a massive iron door. It seemed to loom over me, a foreboding sentinel guarding whatever lay beyond. With a deep breath, I inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The door groaned open, revealing a chamber bathed in a sickly green light. The air was heavy with the stench of decay, and I could hear the distant drip of water echoing through the space. As I stepped inside, I felt a chill settle over me, seeping into my bones. The room was filled with rows of dilapidated cages, their bars rusted and warped. Something moved within them, a shuffling, haunting sound that sent shivers down my spine. I approached cautiously, heart pounding in my chest. As I peered into one of the cages, I recoiled in horror. Within, a figure huddled, emaciated and covered in filth. Hollow eyes met mine, filled with a mix of desperation and pleading. "Help! Me!" the figure rasped, voice barely above a whisper. My blood ran cold. This was a person, a victim of Chester's sadistic game. Anger surged within me, replacing the fear and pain with a fierce determination to put an end to this madness. "Who are you?" I demanded, voice steady despite the turmoil within me. The figure looked up at me, a glimmer of hope in their eyes. I'm Emily. He brought me here, just like you." I felt a surge of empathy for this poor soul, a fellow pawn in Chester's twisted game. "We need to find a way out of here, Emily. Together, we stand a better chance." She nodded, frail and trembling. Together, we began to search the chamber for any sign of an exit, our determination binding us in a silent pact of survival. The minutes stretched into hours, but we pressed on, driven by a shared desperation to escape this nightmarish prison. Our hands brushed against the cold iron of the cages, a stark reminder of the cruel reality we faced. Finally, as if by some miracle, we discovered a hidden passage concealed behind a false wall. It was a narrow, claustrophobic tunnel. The narrow tunnel stretched before us, a path to what I hoped would be our salvation. Emily and I moved together, our breaths ragged in the stale air, our hearts pounding in unison. Every inch forward was a step away from the horrors of the chamber, a desperate bid for freedom. As we emerged into the long-forgotten corridor, relief washed over us. It was a small victory, a respite from the relentless trials we had faced. But there was no time for rest. We knew that Chester would not let us escape so easily. We pressed forward, guided only by the faint light filtering through cracks in the decaying walls. The air grew colder, the stench of decay giving way to a damp, earthy smell. It was a welcome change from the suffocating heat of the previous chamber. Finally, we arrived at a massive stone door, its surface weathered and covered in moss. It seemed out of place in this macabre labyrinth, an ancient sentinel guarding what lay beyond. With a collective breath, we pushed it open. The room that greeted us was a horrifying tableau of death and suffering. Mangled bodies lay strewn across the floor, contorted in grotesque poses. It was a grim reminder of the fate that awaited those who had come before us. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood, a sickening scent that clung to the walls. Emily and I exchanged a grim glance, a silent acknowledgement of the horrors we had already endured. But there was no turning back now. We had come too far to falter. In the center of the room stood a puzzle, a stark contrast to the carnage that surrounded it. It looked deceptively simple, a grid of interlocking pieces that seemed almost innocuous in comparison to the nightmarish trials we had faced. Emily and I approached cautiously, studying the puzzle for any hidden dangers. It was a test of intellect, a challenge that seemed almost out of place in this chamber of horrors. But we couldn't afford to underestimate it. With a shared nod, we set to work, each piece fitting into place with a satisfying click. The puzzle yielded to our determination, its solution revealed in a matter of minutes. It was a small victory, a glimmer of hope in the face of unspeakable darkness. But our triumph was short-lived. As the final piece fell into place, the room seemed to shudder around us. The walls groaned, the stone shifting with a malevolent intent. I felt a surge of dread wash over me as I realized what was happening. The walls were closing in. Huge spikes protruded from the stone, inching forward with a relentless determination. Emily and I locked eyes, panic and determination warring within us. There was no time to waste. We sprinted towards the narrowing gap, our bodies moving in tandem with a desperate synchronicity. The air grew colder, every breath a painful reminder of the seconds ticking away. The spikes loomed closer, their lethal tips glinting in the dim light. With a final burst of strength, we lunged forward, narrowly squeezing through the narrowing gap. The spikes closed behind us with a sickening thud, inches from our heels. We stood on the other side, chests heaving, bodies covered in a cold sweat. We had made it. The air outside the gruesome chamber was a welcome reprieve, but the relief was short-lived. As Emily and I stepped into the corridor, determination etched on our faces. We need to find a way out of here. Emily's voice was resolute, her eyes scanning the corridor for any sign of escape. We moved in tandem, our steps echoing in the stillness. As we navigated the maze-like passages, our senses remained on high alert. The oppressive silence weighed on us, broken only by the distant echo of our footsteps. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden threat, every turn a potential trap. Here, Emily's voice cut through the silence, drawing my attention to a door at the end of the corridor. It seemed unassuming, a wooden barrier standing between us and the unknown. Without hesitation, Emily pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit room. Inside this room was computer monitors and all kinds of other equipment. This was his surveillance room. "We might find something useful in here," Emily suggested, her eyes scanning the room. We set to work, searching for anything that could aid our escape. It wasn't long before we came across a set of old blueprints, detailing the layout of the house. It was a stroke of luck, a potential lifeline in our desperate situation. With newfound determination, we studied the plans, mapping out our route to freedom. "There's a side entrance here," Emily pointed to a spot on the blueprint. "If we can make it there, we might have a chance." We moved quickly, retracing our steps through the winding corridors. The weight of the house seemed to press down on us, its walls closing in with every passing second. But as we reached the designated exit, our hopes were dashed. The door stood before us, but it was encased in a shimmering barrier of crackling electricity. "No," Emily's voice trembled with disbelief. "There's no way through." I stared at the electrified barrier, frustration boiling within me. It seemed that every path to freedom was blocked, every attempt at escape thwarted. "We can't give up," I said, my voice firm. There has to be another way. We retraced our steps once more, our determination unyielding. It was then that I realized there was only one option left. I had to confront Chester Holmes, to face the man responsible for this nightmarish ordeal. As we made our way back through the twisting corridors, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. This was it, the final showdown. There was no turning back now. We made our way back to the surveillance room to see if there were a way to turn off the electrified barriers. As we entered the room again, the presence of Chester Holmes hung heavy in the air. "Chester," I called out, my voice echoing through the room. "Show yourself." There was a tense silence, broken only by the distant hum of electricity, and then, as if materializing from the shadows, Chester Holmes stepped forward. His eyes gleamed with a dangerous light, his expression twisted with a mixture of satisfaction and madness. "You didn't think it would be that easy, did you, Drake?" he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "You thought you could waltz into my life, buy up my property, and expect no consequences." I stared at him. "I didn't do anything wrong or illegal, Chester. You foreclosed on this property by not paying years of property taxes. Chester, if you just let us leave, I'll sign the deed and give it back to you, I swear. I didn't know I took it from you. The realtor in the bank said it has been abandoned for years." Chester's laughter echoed through the surveillance room. "It's a little too late for that now, Drake." Chester spat. "Even if I did allow you to leave and hold you to your word, what's to stop you from calling the cops as soon as you're free? Do you take me as some kind of idiot?" "No, not at all, Chester interrupted. "I had to make you understand, Drake," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You needed to feel the weight of your actions, the consequences of your greed. You took my home as I was about to pay what was owed. This home has been in my lineage since 1831. I fell on hard times, so I devised a plan to lure rich, uppity, stuck-up assholes like yourself here to take their identity and rob them. I needed the money. Don't you understand?" I felt a surge of righteous anger coursing through me. "This is not justice, Chester. This is madness." "Perhaps. Desperation can sometimes lead people to madness," he conceded, a twisted smile playing on his lips. "But it was the only way. Our confrontation was a battle of wills, a clash of ideologies. In that moment, I knew there was no reasoning with Chester Holmes. If I wanted to escape this nightmare, I would have to outsmart him somehow." "Thank you again, baby girl. You did well as always," Chester said. As I turned to look at Emily, I saw her cold, unyielding gaze fixed on me, the gun in her hand steady and unwavering. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. She was not victim, but an accomplice to the horrors that had befallen me. My heart pounded in my chest, a cocktail of betrayal and fury coursing through me. The pieces fell into place with a sickening clarity. Emily was Chester's daughter. They were in this together. I turned back to Chester, his smug satisfaction evident in every line of his face. "Here's the deal, Drake," he began, his tone dripping with malice. "If you want to live, if you want to see another day, you'll do as I say." His words hung in the air, a sinister ultimatum that left no room for negotiation. I felt the weight of his demand pressing down on me, suffocating and inescapable. "You will marry Emily," he continued, his voice laced with sadistic glee. "You will have children together and you will help raise them to our way of life. And with your status, you will help by tricking the wealthy to this house. The fortune you made will now be our fortune as well." I pretended to acquiesce, to play along with his twisted game. It was a dangerous gambit, a calculated risk. But I knew I had to bide my time, to seize the right moment to turn the tables. "Now, do you agree?" "Yes, I have no choice but to." As I moved closer to Emily, my heart pounded in my chest. Her gaze remained fixed on me, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. With a swift, calculated motion, I disarmed her, the gun now in my trembling hands. "Emily, I'm so sorry," I whispered, my voice laced with regret. She stared at me, her eyes wide with shock and betrayal. I held her as a hostage. I then turned to face Chester, the gun now leveled at him. "Turn off the barriers, Chester. Now." He hesitated for a moment, his expression a mixture of fury and begrudging respect. With a reluctant nod, he complied, deactivating the electrified perimeter. "Now lead the way outside," I commanded, my voice unwavering. He complied, knowing that any defiance could be their undoing. As we stepped outside, the cold night air hit me like a punch to the gut. Freedom was within reach, but I knew I couldn't afford to let my guard down. As I turned to make my escape, I heard a loud boom, then searing pain shot through my leg. I stumbled, my vision swimming with agony. I looked down to see the blood-soaked fabric of my pants, a bullet wound searing through my flesh. As I began to lose consciousness, I saw them walking towards me. He dragged me back into the accursed house, every step a cruel reminder of my failure. The room he locked me in was suffocating, the air heavy with the scent of decay and despair. The walls seemed to close in around me, as if bearing witness to my torment. I woke up strapped to a chair, with subliminal messages playing in the background. He was trying to mold me into something else. As days turned into weeks, and Chester's relentless brainwashing began to take its toll, he played mind games with me, manipulating my thoughts and emotions until I could no longer distinguish reality from his twisted version of it. He bombarded me with images and sounds, a relentless assault on my senses. He whispered promises of power and control, of a life without consequences. Slowly but surely, my subconscious began to change, eagerly latching onto his every command. I forgot who I used to be. The memories of my former life slipped through my fingers like grains of sand, lost to the abyss of Chester's malevolent influence. In their place, a new identity emerged, one that eagerly complied with his demands, one that reveled in the darkness he promised. The transformation was complete, a horrifying metamorphosis that left no trace of the man I once was. And then one fateful day, he unlocked the door, a wicked grin stretching across his face. "It's time, Drake. Time to fulfill your purpose." I stepped out of the room, my newfound purpose burning within me. The outside world awaited, a canvas upon which I would paint our future vision. A year had passed since that fateful day, its secrets hidden within its walls. Emily and I are now married. Emily is pregnant, and due any day now with our daughter Eliza. My late father-in-law Chester also passed away 5 months ago from a sudden heart attack. But Emily and I still carry on with his traditions and his vision for the future. As the evening sun painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, we prepared to host a dinner party. The house now bore the facade of normalcy, and we updated the home and fixed it up with a touch of modernness, while still keeping all the natural woodwork, concealing the horrors that lurked beneath. Guests arrived, their laughter and conversation masking the darkness that pulsed within the walls. Emily moved gracefully among them, the women touching her swollen belly. Emily looked so beautiful and radiant. When the time came for the toast, we stood side by side, our glasses raised in celebration. The room fell silent, a collective breath held in anticipation. "To new beginnings," Emily's voice rang out, her smile masking the truth that lay beneath. "May our futures be bright and filled with joy." The guests raised their glasses in response, their smiles masking the unease that lingered in the air. As the poisoned wine touched their lips, and they continued to drink with the laughter and conversation flowing freely. After moments, the poison began to take effect. The guests began vomiting and dropping to the floor like flies. Emily and I stood together smiling as we watched the entertaining spectacle before us. I'm Mr. Night-Terror, your host, and I thank you for watching and experiencing this story with me. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel, as I will be narrating many more scary stories in the upcoming days. If you have an idea of a story you would like me to narrate, please leave a request and description in the comments. And as always, stay scared, my friends.